Hey, hello everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and this is Patron Hangout number 92. All right, lots of stuff in the news, a whole bunch of stuff, including interesting information on Madeleine McCann and suspect Christian Bruckner. Just came out as to why the Germans are looking at him. But I'm not going to talk about that. Why? Because it's just too much of an explanation. So following this hangout, for you guys that are here, I'm going to do a separate video and put it up immediately as soon as I can get it through YouTube, so I can discuss it in a little more detail than I would have time to do here. All right, so sorry, you have to wait like a couple more hours for that one to come out because it is interesting and I want to be clear. Welcome everybody who's in the chat room. There's Sarah, Molly, Charlotte, Annie is here. Let's see, who am I missing here? Emily is here. I can't move things correctly today. All right. Aisha is here. Lisa Ann is here. If I'm missing you, I'm at VLW is here. I'm probably just missed a bunch of you guys. Sorry about that. It's been one of those days with a lot of technical issues. My iPad wiped out my entire section on this Hangout, so I had to go find everything I was going to talk about. So anyway, if you're new to the channel, please do like and subscribe. And if you'd like to be in the chat room, please do join Patreon. The link is below and it's $5 a month. It supports this very educational channel. And you can also come to all the live shows, which there are at least 8 per month, 4 hangouts and 4 case shows. All right. So anyway, what is the news? There is just so much of it. Coming in loud and clear, I'm glad, because at least that won't be one of my technical difficulties today. And also, I've been sick for the last 3 days, so excuse me if I hack and sneeze. All right, so one of the big things that came out, along with the interesting information on Madeleine McCann and what they're looking at, is their body of, let me see if I can find this here. Let's say I've had a little bit of technical difficulty, so I'm hoping I'm going to be able to show things which I may not be able to. So I tell you, everything has gone kablooey here. All right. I want to talk about Madison Scott. And she's a young woman that went missing in Canada quite a while ago, like 12 years ago. And what was sad about that was she had gone to a party, a bunch of people that were hanging out near a lake. Let me read you what happened. She was 20 years old when she was reported missing, and she'd been at a birthday party at Hogsback Lake, 25 kilometers south of Vanderhoof. This is British Columbia. And she just vanished out of her tent, and nobody ever knew what happened to her at all. And now her body has been found all these years later. And so people are asking me, what do you think happened to Madison Scott? And at this point, I honestly cannot tell you. I don't know. There's no autopsy in yet. We don't know what condition her body was found in. It was found fairly near. And I don't know what they mean by fairly near. It's on some property near that area. To me, I would like to know, are we talking easy walking distance? Are we talking you need a car to get there? So there's a lot of information that I don't know yet, which would lend to figuring out whether she wandered off and something happened to her, to do with that wasn't a homicide, or did she walk out of the tent with somebody and it is a homicide? There's going to be a lot of more information coming in. So I will address this case when the autopsy comes back, but I don't want to jump the gun on this one because I just don't have enough information. Maddie Scott is the same person. Do they call her Maddie Scott? Oh, Madison Scott. Yeah, I think you're talking about the same person. Yes. So don't know yet. I don't know what the police ever came up with when they interviewed all the party goers, especially the last ones that saw her. But now that they have something to work with, it does help, because when you have such limited information, you don't even have a body, unless somebody's just going to confess to something, it's hard to know. So we're going to have to wait just a little bit. Somebody had to bury her. Wait a minute. I don't know. Did you, let's see. It says a search warrant was executed on a rural property on the east side of Vanderhoof, associated with the discovery of her body. It didn't say anything at this point that I found that she was buried either, in a shallow grave or whatever. And that is important. Did somebody see something where she was actually covered in a shallow grave of some sort? Because that would be obviously concerning. And therefore, if obviously she's covered, well, no, I'll take that back. Even if her body is in a shallow grave, it does not mean she was murdered. Okay. And the reason that is possible, and this has happened quite often, is they'll be doing drugs and someone will OD, and then the rest of the people go, oh crap, what do we do? She's OD, they're going to look at us, and they go and bury her and run away. Not saying this happened here, but it has happened before. So I can't specifically say, even if she were in a shallow grave, that she was murdered. It certainly would lend that direction, but I wouldn't jump to that conclusion. First, need to do an autopsy, see if there's any evidence of what she died of. Was she bludgeoned? Was she stabbed? Was she shot? Was she buried with clothing on? Was she naked? I mean, all these things make a difference before you try to figure out what happened. So at this point, I've heard about this case many times before, and I've never really jumped on board with it because I just had so little information, except for people said she was in her tent and then she wasn't. I think she was supposed to be there actually in the morning. This is a crappy website I had to pull up after I lost all my websites that I had set for this show. So don't know. Now, on that note, there's another case that's in the news, and this is the case of the 6 women found dead in the Portland, Oregon area or close by somewhere. Not all of them are like right in the same spot. There's distances between them. But these are the 6 women. And so there is talk that there is a serial killer in Oregon. Okay. Now, let me talk to you a little bit about, is this true? Do we know there's a serial killer? And is this unusual to find 6 missing women's bodies? All right. So let me read you a little from the story. After 6 women found dead, Portland officials warn against serial killer speculation. Now, just to say this up front, police always warn you against serial killer speculation. Why? Because once that gets out there, people go bananas. The media goes bananas. The police are under massive stress, and they prefer that not to happen. So they say, hey, wait a minute, we don't know that this is a serial killer. Now, do I agree with him or don't I agree with him? Well, there was one case, I think it was a Canadian case actually, and I just remember this forever, where the police said, don't speculate that this is a serial killer. But all the bodies were buried at different times, like under the same tree. It's like, what do you think? I mean, how could it not be a serial killer? I mean, just like a guy killed his girlfriend and just decided that's a great tree to bury her under. And then 6 months later, some other guy killed his girlfriend and decided that's a great tree to bury her under. And they just all picked the same tree. I mean, it was ridiculous. So yeah, there are times if you dig up somebody's backyard and there's 6 bodies in it, serial killer. But when you have a situation where you don't necessarily have the bodies next to each other, you don't have DNA linking them together with one person, how do you know if it's a serial killer? And there's lots of possibilities. One is, and I want to point this out, the minute I saw this case, I looked up the different women, and I thought it was interesting because there was very little information about the women coming out when they disappeared. And finally, I found the information, and I figured, this is what I figured. We're probably talking about women who are homeless, probably have drug issues, and possibly prostitution. And that turns out to be true. Now, there's two reasons that this is important. And some will say, well, that's why the police didn't give a damn. Well, it's also it's not that they don't give a damn, but the problem when people go missing who have lifestyles that mean they just might disappear off for many, many reasons. Might shift locations because they don't have a permanent home at that point. They go with somebody who offers them drugs. They go with somebody for prostitution purposes. They move around a lot. Even the families, oftentimes, when the police come to them and say, you know, somebody said this one's missing. Well, why didn't you report her for 3 months? Well, we just thought she was with her some friends someplace. So they have the same problem. You know, if you have a school teacher with 3 kids at home and a husband, and she's part of the PTA, and she's not home within 24 hours, the report goes into the police because everybody's jumping on it saying there's no way she'd go missing. But when you have a person involved in a lifestyle which is problematic, you often get delayed reporting that the person went missing, and maybe people don't look that hard for them because where are you going to look? It's not like you have absolute avenues. So sometimes it takes a while for the police to determine that there's a problem. Now, in this case, they found 6 bodies. There's a problem. Now, they have determined, I think at least one of them was definitely murdered because she was bludgeoned. So, she was murdered. I haven't heard all the news on all the bodies. Now, if people go off and do drugs, they can end up ODing. And as I just pointed out, somebody could be with them and just shove them out of the old car. Didn't murder them, but they don't know what to do with them because they're doing drugs too. And then maybe they have a warrant out for them. So they'll, we'll just chuck her in the woods. Then again, maybe they were all murdered by the same person. Is it possible? Or it's possible there are 2 serial killers. And that can happen. They can overlap because First of all, Oregon is a big serial killer territory. And I always make the joke, it's just that, people like to move west, including serial killers. And when they get there, there's no place to go because you're at the very edge of the United States on that side. And so you get a lot, and there's a lot of trees there. I mean, Oregon, beautiful, beautiful place. I went there last year, drove around with my son, and that was one of the prettiest places I've ever seen in my life. But a whole lot of trees. Whole lot of empty areas, very useful to dump people. So you can have a serial killer. It could be someone who is targeting, because when you have lifestyles that you have desperation in those lifestyles, you don't have a place to sleep, you'll take a place to sleep with somebody. You need drugs, you'll get in their vehicle. If you're prostituting, you need the money. Sometimes you need the money for drugs. So they become very, very vulnerable, women who are in this position. And so a serial killer knows that. And he also knows that because they have that vulnerable lifestyle, they're probably not going to be missed for 3 months. They're a good victim group. So for a serial killer, get that woman to get in your car for any one of those 3 reasons: prostitution, drugs, need a place to stay. You just drive her away and you can rape and murder her and chuck her in the bushes. So should the police look at this as a possible serial homicide, or set of serial homicides? Absolutely. I've often said that, that you can't ignore the fact it could be a serial killer. So look at it that way. See if there's any connections between these 6 women as far as location goes that they might have been in where they went missing. Because I doubt that this guy's just running all over, creation in Oregon and just happening. Well, it could be happening across the women and here, there, and everywhere. But a lot of times they target areas. And then you want to find out if these women were all seen in a similar area, maybe within a 5-mile radius or whatever, that this guy could be operating in. But then again, if you find out that this woman died of a drug overdose and this woman just died of exposure, then you're down 2 that may not be serial homicides. And even the woman who was clearly bludgeoned, was she bludgeoned by a serial killer? Was she bludgeoned by some guy who got pissed off at her? Hard to say. So should the police be looking at this as a possible series of serial homicides? Yes. Should we jump to conclusions that they are? No. So I don't think at this point but if you're going to be outside in the elements, if you are going to be involved with, are homeless, are doing drugs and involved in prostitution, you are vulnerable, and it's a shame. I mean, and the problem is, you can say till you turn blue in the face, hey, ladies, be careful. How are you going to be careful? You still need to get drugs. You still need to make money, and you still need a place to stay. It's very hard to be careful. And even when police have gone into an area and like warned prostitutes in a certain area, hey, be careful whose car you get into. They still get into people's cars because that's how they make money. So it's hard to stop the victims from putting themselves in situations to get victimized. So I don't know where they're going to go from here, but we're going to, we'll see. I'm going to check your comments on this. Well, here's a point. I was thinking of that very thing last weekend when I went out on a short hike with my son. It'd be jolly hard to find a body disposed in the woods. And that's why they're usually found by dog walkers and joggers and hikers. Because as long as you have a vehicle that you can go into some isolated location and find a ravine and dump a body in a ravine, cover it up with some whatever, that body may not be found for 20 years. So it's not that hard sometimes to do that, sadly. Welcome, Lisa. I'm glad you made it live too. Let's see. I'm going back up here a second. Yeah, the high level of homelessness in Portland, and there's very high level, and also drugs are running rampant. Portland is it's hold on, I'm going to sneeze. I told you I'm sick, so usually when I sneeze, people start counting. I can't sneeze because I usually sneeze like up to 12 times. Yes, I was in Portland. It looks like it was once a charming town, and right now it's a mess. It's so terribly sad, absolutely sad. But yeah, it doesn't help when you get large numbers too of people in serious situations of homelessness and drugs. There's so many that people, even the police, just kind of sort of throw up their hands and go, well, what you going to do? And that makes it much more difficult. So, excuse me. Oh man. Yeah. They're looking in 100-mile radius. That's quite a large radius. And then that's a large radius. Usually serial killers don't go that far unless they're truckers or something. Because that's when you kill somebody and put a body in the trunk of your car, or she's you kill her inside your car. You want to get the body out of there sooner than later because A, you don't want the dead body with you, and B, you don't want the police to stop you somewhere along the way and go look in your car and see the dead woman in there. So usually a serial killer will find a place that's fairly local, usually. I always say usually because we've got those anomalies like 5%. And then people go, well, see, that one was 100 miles away. The guy drove 100 miles. An anomaly. But generally speaking, the location where they kidnap the woman or abduct, not necessarily a woman, male, female, child, adult, where they abduct somebody is actually not that big a deal because all they need is a moment, an opportunity, just an opportunity. And they can look all around, just like when you're crossing the street. Nobody's coming. You grab the person. You just need that 1 minute opportunity, and then you're gone. On the other end, when you're parking your vehicle and you're dragging out the body and you're trying to dispose of it, you need more time. You need a lot more time. So what you don't want is to pull into Lover's Lane, not realizing it's Lover's Lane. You don't want to pull onto somebody's property, not realizing whose property it is and that they might be out there for some reason, or they might have cameras. You want to go someplace you feel you're not going to be seen and you have that time to work with. So it's usually a place you're familiar with. Maybe someplace you went fishing. Maybe it's a picnic ground, Maybe it's just some road really well. So a lot of times when you're looking at a serial killer, you look at places he knows well when it comes to, quote, wilderness, places where he could dispose of a body that he would feel comfortable going to, and say that's actually the harder end of things, is disposing the body rather than grabbing the person. Because when they grab the person, nothing really has happened yet. You know what I'm saying? even if somebody saw you sort of grab her, you could scream out something like, "Hey, lady, get out of my car." And people go, "I guess she was doing something wrong." And you drive off really quick. And you could always say to the police, hey, I wasn't trying to abduct her. See, you can come up with something. But when you have a body in your car, kind of hard to explain the body away. So much more difficult. Yeah. So we'll see what happens with what's happening in Oregon. We'll have to wait to see what all the autopsy results are, what all the different bodies were found, what situations they were found in, clothed, unclothed, shot, stabbed. Same thing we're talking about with the Canadian issue. We need to have more information to then start determining what happened. But while I point that out, again, we have, oh my God, the smiley face killer returns to Pittsburgh this time. And you know, these days they're doing these fact check things, which always kind of make me laugh because a lot of times it's like, who's doing the fact checking? But this one says, no evidence of serial killer in Pittsburgh. Smiley face theory debunked. And I've done a lot of shows on the issue of young people, students. And there was one recently in Texas where they ended up, what was it? Lake Lady? I can't remember. Lady Lake? I can't remember the name of it now. Quite a few young people ended up drowned in the lake. But it was right near a bar district. And so the theory there again was smiley face killer. That this is the supposed killer that after they drown the young men, don't sexually assault, don't just drown them. And they're usually big guys. So it's like, how did they do that without injury? And then they drown them and then they put a smiley face in the area. It's a stupid thing that started a long time ago. And these two detectives from New York, retired detectives, who should be chastised heavily for this, push this theory because it made good TV. And it pissed me off really badly because it was ridiculous. But that's been going on and on across the country now. Every time a young person ends up in water, and it doesn't matter what location. It used to be just Minnesota and Wisconsin. Then it started moving to any place else with water. And now it's in Pittsburgh. So it says here, this is on Twitter, Facebook post. Pittsburgh has a serial killer, reads the post. Be careful, be smart, be mindful. MFS have named him the smiley face killer. Everyone, please stay alert. I don't know why this isn't getting more notice. WTF. He targets young adults. Now, a lot of the smiley face thing is not just one guy. You see, it's an entire conspiracy of smiley face guys across the entire United States, like 20 or 30 men. They all discuss things on the internet and decide who they're going to drown next, you see. So there's like 30 serial killers all working together. He targets young adults from 20 and up. His hunting grounds are around nature. Okay, usually it's around college students who get drunk, but okay. Trails, and nature is also his dump site, which is why people keep getting found in rivers. This is not a joke. Post was shared over 5,000 times in a week. Lord. So the rating, of course, was false. Thank God. There's no evidence recent deaths in the Pittsburgh area connected, according to the local district attorney's office. The smiley face killer theory claims graffiti connects a slew of deaths across the country, but has largely been debunked, an expert told USA Today. One of those experts was me many, many years ago. I debunked that right away, but just a frustrating thing. But yeah, so there's not a serial killer that are drowning young people in Pittsburgh, so we can get rid of that one. But this is a fascinating serial killer story. I'll check your comments before I go to a really neat one that came out. That's like Ladybird Lake. Thank you, Ladybird Lake. That's here in Austin. Everyone is catching serial killer fever. They're just drunk, ending up in the lake. Yeah. Drinking and water do not go together. And mostly it's men. So women don't pee in water. That's my theory. I mean, that's not what we do. We go into the bushes and then we just fall over on the ground and then crawl out. Men, what can you say? Men, Yeah. So let's go to this fascinating story, which was a DNA story, which is, and I think I'll tell you what's truly interesting. Let me find it. Okay. Hold on. Where'd you go? Where'd you go? Where'd you go? Don't you have disappeared on me? Told you this whole thing. YouTube wiped out my entire section. So excuse me a second while I go find a guy. Oh, come on. Really? One second. Okay, found it. All right. It's giving me so much trouble today. All right. This guy. Here he is. No, that's not him. Not him at all. That was American Sniper. Okay. This guy, he's an attorney. Okay. This is fascinating. There was a 15-year manhunt to find Boston's serial rape suspect. FBI used forensic investigative genetic genealogy to identify a New Jersey, guess what he is? An attorney. This is kind of shocking. And obtained evidence from a drinking glass used at a corporate event. All right, let me tell you some more. There were 4 women who were attacked in Boston in 2008 and in 2007, and they all matched. Now, this guy, this was 15 years ago, and the guy is not that old. How old is he now? He's 35 now. His name is Matthew Nilo. He's 35 now, and this was in 2007, 2008. So he was just a student at the time, and apparently did not know the meaning of not leaving DNA, in spite of the fact DNA had been around, but he was young and stupid, didn't know how to use a condom. And 4 women, all linked by DNA. And so then they did the genealogy database, and it all came back to him, and they did go and get his real DNA, and it matched. And what's shocking about it is these three of the women were raped in Terminal Street. Now, I don't know Boston very well, but listen to this. Police took samples from the 3 women who were raped in Terminal Street in Boston at the time of the incidents and processed the glove of a 4th victim who poked her assailant in the eye while wearing the garment. All 3 matched the same profile, leading officers to believe that the same man committed each of the assaults. 15 years later, they matched, and Nilo. They got a sample from a glass he drank at a corporate event. Now, mind you, this guy, what's fascinating is apparently his fiance, he just proposed to his fiance, and she's in court with her rosaries going, oh, I'm like, I think the beads aren't going to help you. You know, I think the dudes, you want to get away from him, and maybe you dodged a bullet not marrying the guy. So they had this backlog of these DNA kits, but they finally did some of these unsolved cases because they can do more now than they ever used to be. But this guy, oh, here's the wife. Oh, there's a fiance. Oh, she's very attractive. I'm sorry, I don't have a picture of her up. Oh, I just saw her on this site. So she is crying a lot. Because, I mean, how embarrassing. I mean, if you fall in love with a guy too, and you think he's an attorney, and you've got your life set up, and then you find out that he's a serial rapist, not good. Now, what's very interesting about it? Now, one of the things people get very concerned about is, and I get concerned about this too. Now, this was not touch DNA, mind you. When you do just touch DNA, you know, that's easily transferred. If you have more than touch DNA, like semen, saliva, blood, it's much better. But a lot of times the claim is, well, it somehow could have gotten there some other way. But here's the clincher in this. Now, this guy, where was he a lawyer at? Let me see again. He's a New Jersey lawyer. He also had lived in California, but guess where else he lived? Oh yeah, in Boston at the exact time of the rapes. That to me is what really clinches it, because if they can't place him there, then you go, really? But the simple fact is he was there. His DNA was there and he was there. So then it's probably a pretty good, hold on a second, I got the sneezing thing going. Only one. It must be because I'm on doing show. My granddaughter counts. We're up to 12. So she thinks if she gets to 13, she gets $20. I think if I get to 13, I'm dead. That's my theory, because I've never made it to 13. So I want to talk a little bit about something that somebody said, which I found this really interesting. Let me pull it up here. There was some comments, all right, about, he was a student at the time. So here's the comment. All right. That wasn't the comment. Wait a minute. Hold on. Wrong comment. Oh, here we go. This person commented, I think that more upscale suburban college bros go through a sexual assault phase. What? Really? To a greater or lesser degree. Okay. That's creepy as heck. Then more go through that than one would guess. It's totally wrong and creates a lot of victims, but likely isn't as rare as we would hope. They may grow out of it. Well, they don't grow out of the desire to rape. They might be mature or decide they don't want to go to jail. They finish school, marry, have kids. It seems like the most unlikely person to have done such a thing. Now, this guy, what he's really talking about here is date rape. And date rape, where it involves a lot of drunk people. And accusations fly. Sometimes they're warranted. Sometimes they're not. This dude did not date rape. He was using weapons and dragging the women into bushes and kept telling them he was going to kill them. And there were 4 women that he did not know. Not date rape. So this guy is a 100% serial rapist and could be easily a serial killer if he decided to continue on, like to get rid of witnesses. Now, so one of the questions is, he's 35 now. Does that mean he stopped? Because he went on, to law school. He's a bright guy. Did he stop? Can he stop? Hold on a second, sorry. I'm going to use my very fancy Dunkin' Donuts. Tissue. Okay. Did he just stop? We don't know. There are people who are married who carry on being serial rapists. There are people who are married who carry on being serial killers. And they go on and have wives and children and jobs. And they're still serial killers or serial rapists. We don't know. And so this is one of these questions where now that they know what he did back then, they're going to have to start examining to see whether he has committed more crimes in the next, at least the next decade and a half. Is it possible he stopped? Yes. Sometimes they stop for reasons. Maybe they almost got caught and they decide they're not going to do that for now. But this was a fascinating one, that they caught the guy through DNA. And I have no question that it is legit, because he was in Boston. He did hang around that district. And I didn't see how much the women identified his looks, but I'm going to say it probably a pretty good case against the guy. BTK had stopped during periods when he had kids. Yes. Okay. And by the way, I will mention BTK while I'm at it here, because let's talk about Dennis Rader, because he did pop into the old news. All right. So here we have, hold on a second. Sorry. All right. So here's Dennis Rader. What happened with Dennis Rader? He is back in the news because they tossed his cell because they think he might be connected to other crimes. So just because he had kids doesn't mean he stopped, mind you. We just don't know. And did he just get away with them? And so now they're continuing, they're looking at all his writings, and they're continuing to see whether he's committed more crimes. And in case you haven't seen my 2 BTK videos, I was out in Wichita. I still do not believe Dennis Rader committed the first 5 homicides, which is the Otero family and the Bright, Catherine Bright woman. They all worked at the same location, as did my suspect. And I still don't quite buy what happened in that whole fiasco as to that Dennis Rader was the original BTK. I think he's a serial killer, 100%. I just don't know that I think he isn't a copycat that came in later. And there's a whole bunch of squirrely things that happened with the DNA that claim that the DNA matched him in the Otero killings. Nothing with the Bright, by the way. And that he confessed in court did not impress me because I already knew those things myself. Very strange situations. You have to listen to there's two videos on BTK and whether Dennis Rader was the original guy. So we'll see. At this point, it's widely accepted that Dennis Rader is BTK. And I think my opinion is going to not be highly impressive to many people. But I put it out there anyway because I did go there. I did have a very good suspect in the original 5 killings, the Oteros and Bright, which was, by the way, turned out to be a suspect that the police did also have. And he also was a suspect in the murder of his own wife. Yeah. There's a lot of things that go on. Sometimes when they want to close cases down, there are ways to close cases down without actually having to prove that you close the case down legitimately. And that's what I think personally happened in BTK. But, well, you have to watch those 2 videos and see what you think. I knew them all too. That's the point. There's most of these details, A, were known, and B, they were known to the police. So, yeah. You're gonna have to go watch the videos because I can't go into the whole explanation here. It's very complicated, but even the DA, when I refuted certain facts, she got very upset, but she couldn't defend herself. So that made me suspect that something really fishy was going on. And I point that out as far as when you have people confess in court, instead of proving they did it, it benefited him because he got a deal out of it. Same way Todd Kohlhepp. If you go down to the Superbike murders, maybe I should link that below. Superbike murders. I know Todd Kohlhepp did not commit the Superbike murders. I know he was a serial killer, but he did not commit the mass murder. And I have proof that he lied, and I have proof that the police supported the lies. It's one of the few times I would say I don't like the guy and he's a killer, and I don't want the Innocent Project to get him off of the other killings, but he didn't commit Superbikes, and I'll stand by that. But yet, all he had to do was confess to it, and it is real egregious. Let me put it this way: I believe that the police and the prosecution, I would say, the dereliction of duty and far more than that. And along with the fact they took $900 of mine for a FOIA request and did not give me the information and refused to return the money. So something really fishy is going on down there, but I have that all documented, and you can go to my video on Superbike, Todd Kohlhepp, and I have proof, actual proof. I worked the case. I was down there in South Carolina. I worked with the sheriff's department on that. I mean, I worked there. So for the whole week I was there, I saw everything. So you see these things happen. And a lot of times by the time the media gets hold of it, the media does what the media wants to do. And sometimes they do it on behest of the police department and the prosecutor's office. And sometimes they don't, but, sometimes they do. And so when we're out here in the public and we haven't worked on the cases and don't know all the details, we often go with whatever we're told, because how are we going to know otherwise? And then when somebody like me comes along and puts out a video and says, hey, this is what the facts are, and here's some information you can actually see. My ability to reach the public is like this, where the CNN is like this. So it's like shouting in the forest, nobody hears you. And it's frustrating when you know better and you can't, even if you proved it, you can't prove it. So that's the way it goes. That's just the way it is. Well, yes, he did love attention, but I think, also I just don't, some of the information was just stuff that was not like he couldn't have known it. So, yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah, I do have a video on Superbike. Yes, I'll put it below. Yeah, definitely have a Superbike. I have a video on that, and also all the links to all my blogs on it. One of the most frustrating things I ever dealt with, because the police actually went on air in one of the documentaries and actually stated that Todd Kolop, this is the major thing, I'm going to go on from here with something else, that Todd Kolop said that they said he knew something that nobody but the offender, the killer, and the police knew. And that was all four victims were shot in the forehead. And everybody said, oh my God, if he knew that and the police knew that, then he has to be the guy. But I have autopsy proof that not one of the victims was shot in the forehead. Autopsy. It's a complete lie. It was a complete fabrication by both Kolop and the police. It's like, what the heck? And I sent the autopsy reports to the media, and they would not acknowledge it, because they liked the story they had, and they could care less about the truth. Really, really sad. Very, very frustrating. Okay, so that's enough of that. Otherwise, I'll get off on a huge tangent, and I don't want to. But I thought the catching of this particular killer was really cool. All right, now let's see. Let me see what else I was going to talk about today, because there's a whole bunch of things. I had a really interesting question. Oh, I do want to point this one out. This is a really sad case. It's never been solved, and I can't do a full show on it, but sorry. This beautiful woman, and let me find my story on her. Her name is Desiree Gibbon, and she was murdered in, let me get the date on this, and here's another picture of her. She's just beautiful. She was murdered in 2017 in Jamaica, and never been solved. And she went down to Montego Bay, and by the way, there were some really cruel things said about the mother of her. This is stuff you see on the internet. It's really sad. Somebody actually went on one of the sites and said the mother was a clear racist, because she was saying, oh, the Jamaicans were bad and she doesn't like black people, all this stuff. Well, this is her mother and this is their father. So I'm going to say mom's not too racist, because that's her husband, who is Jamaican. All right. So Desiree, this beautiful girl, she lived in Queens, New York, and she used to go to Jamaica to visit family and stuff. And she decided to go down there and work at her grandmother's hotel, which was a little ways out of Montego Bay. So her grandmother, obviously being a Jamaican, right, running this little hotel, and she's going to make money. Now, I'm not sure how much money you can make at a small hotel your grandmother runs, but okay. But her trip ended in tragedy when she was found brutally murdered in November of 2017. The investigation Discovery did a show called Still a Mystery, The Silent Witnesses. And that was one of the cases that they showed. Now, she was a model. She wanted to get into broadcast journalism, and you can see she's very attractive. And she wanted to go to a film school in Europe. To pay for college, she went to Jamaica in October 2007. She had family there to lean on to support, with her father being from Jamaica. At the time, she lived at the hotel owned by her grandmother and was about to land a job as a bartender. Now, I'm going to get into victimization in a minute on this, because there's some things that are questionable. Anyway, what happened was she was alive at 11:27 p.m. She was in casual attire, and she told the security guard she would be back soon. Now, she left the hotel at 11:27 p.m. It's actually on video of her leaving the hotel. She goes out the gate and turns, and that's the last she's ever seen. Her body is found on a rural road someplace, and she has had her throat slashed. She's been beaten and her throat is slashed. Apparently, also, she was on her knees when that happened, so almost executed. With her, she took her iPhone, but back in the hotel was her Jamaican cell phone. And apparently she used the Jamaican phone to call locally and the iPhone as her regular phone. And then she left her wallet in the hotel, but that doesn't mean she didn't take money with her. I want to point that out. Now, she supposedly said to the security guard, "I'll be back soon." What does that mean? I don't know. Does that mean she was just going to the end of the parking lot and coming back? Or did she just say that as, "I'll be back soon," like she was going out for a few hours and coming back? What happened to her? Well, one of the things that the parents think that the police have done a horrible job down there. I don't want to say negative things about the Jamaican police force. I believe all detectives want to do their best. I don't know how well trained they are. And by the way, my ex-husband is also Jamaican, so I know Jamaica. And I can tell you one of the things about Jamaica is it's a very high murder rate down there, okay? And even my kids felt last time my children go down, they were going down every year with my ex-husband to visit family down there, and they became nervous being there. They loved a lot of aspects. They have relatives there. They have a great time. They love the food, but they're like, it's starting to freak us out. And they got to the point where they said, if we're going to go down, we're going to stay at a resort, which is interesting because we've rented cars before and driven into the countryside and gone to visit relatives where there's, we have very little electricity and stuff, and had a wonderful time. But over time, my ex got stopped with my kids by the police, and they said, "Well, we're going to give you. You have weapons in the trunk of your car." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" But they targeted him because they knew he was in a rental car. He looked Jamaican, so they figured he was a Jamaican American and would be good for a good bribe. So it's a rough place. And it's sad because a beautiful country, beautiful people, rough place to live. And so one of the things the police said, hey, we did what we could do, but we don't know who it is. We do know must have been somebody she knew. So this is true because it seems a little odd that she would leave the hotel at 11:29 or whatever. Why did she leave? It's not like, what's she going out into the dark for? She's got to be meeting somebody, and it can't be a complete, theoretically, it's not like she just walked out to have a smoke and somebody murdered her, or kidnapped or abducted her. She had some reason to leave the premises on foot. So theoretically, somebody had a car, and she was getting into that car. Why? Now, the funny thing about the police is they said, well, she knew this guy named Rasta. I'm like, oh, like a Rastafarian? Like, how many Rastas are rolling around in Jamaica? That's just hysterical. Although that's very common in a tourist area for a guy to call himself Rasta because he's selling drugs to the local tourists. I mean, for the tourists. And when I was in Jamaica one time when I was 19, 20, I was in, I've been going to the university in Kingston, but I went down to Negril because I heard it was a beautiful place, which it is, but it's a very touristy place. And when I was there, a guy came up to me, a Rasta, and he says to me, "You want to buy some, some ganja weed?" And I said, "No, thanks." And he goes, "You want to buy some Mendrix," which is like Quaaludes. I said, "No, thanks." He goes, "You want sex?" I said, "No, thanks." And he goes, "UCIA?" I'm like, no. But that's kind of a thing that happens in a tourist area. People come down there to smoke weed and dance to reggae music. And a lot of the girls like the Rastas because they're exciting and kind of, different, Why did the girl leave the premises? And I can come up with only a few reasons at that time of night. One would be she had met somebody and she liked that somebody, so she went off with them, not realizing that they were dangerous. 2, drugs. 3, prostitution. And she was beautiful. She had her iPhone. So is it possible she was meeting what she considered a well-known a Jamaican, a wealthy Jamaican man or a wealthy American who could spend money? Family hasn't gotten into that. I'm not saying she was involved in that, but I don't know how much money you can make on your grandmother's small hotel to go away to film school in Europe. Just saying. But that she may have never have done any such thing. Could be she met some guy named Rasta and she thought he was really cool and cute and she was going to go off and have fun with him. And it turned out not to be so fun. Don't know. But she did leave of her own accord. It wasn't like she, was driving along and a car got knocked off the road, or she was walking along to the store in the daytime and somebody abducted her. She walked out in the dark, which is as dangerous a thing as you can do in Jamaica at that, go off property. So do I know what happened to her? No. Do the police know what happened to her? Do they have some suspects? Possibly. Do they have proof? Possibly not, which is unfortunate, but or are they protecting somebody who's well known? But then why would anybody kill her? What would be the point? And some people say, well, it's because she knew something she shouldn't know. What? I mean, it's not what? Was she CIA? I mean, no. So I don't know. Did she not go along with the program, whatever the program turned out to be? Maybe she bit off more than she could chew. Maybe she was going out with somebody and then they acted weird and she got freaked and she started fighting back and they killed her. I don't know. I haven't got a clue. It's really sad because, beautiful, beautiful young woman, and this was, her family lived there in Jamaica. So she wasn't a total tourist. And she was probably quite comfortable in certain ways, culturally. But beautiful women by themselves in the dark often doesn't end up well. So, very sad. They said she was still dressed. So, a setup for what? Somebody angry at her? I don't know. See, that's the thing. There's don't know. I think Rasta was married, or she got killed by Rasta's wife. I don't know about that. Everything was at the hotel. Yes, I mean, no, she took her iPhone. That she took, but other than iPhone, don't know. I don't believe the prostitution thing. I'm not saying I believe it either. I'm just saying it is a possibility. And if sometimes people get very upset with me for pointing out possibilities. If you're the police and you're the detective, you can't just say, well, I don't want to believe this about her. Girls go down and they prostitute in Jamaica. Jamaican women prostitute. And I do know that American women have come down to Jamaica and done the same thing. There are people there who like certain looks. She's gorgeous. So is it possible? It is possible. So you cannot discount something just because you don't want to say, oh, that would be just mean to say that. All I'm saying is you got to look at the possibilities. And so far I only come up with 3. Drugs, prostitution, or she went to meet somebody she trusted and thought she was going to have a nice time. And she didn't think she needed anything but her phone because she's going to jump in their car and she's going to go have a good time with that person. But the problem is we do not know. So if you're going to be a detective, so let's take this seriously. If you're going to be a detective, one thing you cannot do is discount something when you do not know, just because it seems mean. So you have to find out whether the person does use drugs. Whether the person, you got to find out what they do. Because if you've been in this business long enough, you'll find that parents and family will go, oh my goodness, my daughter would never. And you find out the daughter damn well would, because depending on who they can hook up with, if they can hook up with wealthy clients in a place like Jamaica, and you can make good money, some people do it. Just saying, it's possible. So you cannot discount it as a detective. So, and we literally, well, I think a man was about, well, we don't even know that. Likely because of the violence, but again, we just don't know. Yeah, the Rasta women theory. I only saw the Rasta man theory. I don't have any clue. Culturally, you have to know your area and uniqueness of its location. I'm pretty sure her grandmother and her parents told her, don't leave the hotel at night. And as a matter of fact, her parents said she wouldn't do that, but she did do that. She's on tape doing that. See, this is what I'm saying. Young people sometimes will just do very stupid things. I don't know if I can still remember this, although it's a long time ago. I remember adrenaline. I do. I remember the feeling of adrenaline when I was very young. And I remember being in places perhaps shouldn't have been in, taking chances, perhaps shouldn't have been taking those chances. But the adrenaline, the excitement of it, the walking on the wild side, and maybe especially with this guy involved, just that kind of thing. It's exciting. And you sort of throw care to the wind and you go, what the heck? And you go off and do it. Because you're young and foolish. But her parents said she wouldn't do that. But I'm going to say, I've spent enough time in Jamaica, you know what I mean? So I went to the University of Jamaica in Kingston. And I can tell you right there, here's an example of going out after dark. So I was out on a date, and he was a fairly wealthy man. I think I could have made some money off that dude. See how that works. He was a businessman. He invited me out, and I think he would have offered me cash. I didn't do that, but he could, I could see it in his little eyes after I started going out. I went out with him to dinner, but we went out to dinner, and we went to a fine restaurant in New Kingston. And while we're sitting, we had finished our dinner, and then this guy walks up to the table, and he says he says hi to the guy, and the guy said hi to him. They knew each other, they're both businessmen. The other man walked out of the restaurant. We heard pow, 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 and he was dead in the parking lot. And that was a murder scene I was at, because we went out there, and there he was, lying there with blood all around him. And we were there till when his family came and started screaming. I still remember the whole incident. After the incident, guy drove me back to my place, and walking up to my place, I looked around, he had a gun in his hand, and I'm like, what the heck? He's like, well, no, he was paranoid at that point. And we got to my place, we sat down, talked, we only talked, didn't accept any money. And then he took the gun and left, and I was really pissed. I'm like, well, now thanks a lot, guy. But one of the things that happened when we were driving in Kingston is you don't stop for a red light at night. You just keep going. You slow down maybe for a second. As long as you've got that, you go right through the red light, because you can't take a chance on stopping, because you might get shot while you're stopped. This is reality. And I was down there when first time I was down there, I think I was 24. I think I was about 24. No, I couldn't have been 24. Maybe 23, 22, 23, somewhere around there. I don't remember how many times I went down there. I went down there twice before I met my husband in the U.S. and then married a Jamaican guy myself. And then I went back later on to visit family and stuff down there. But I'm telling you, it's not like she shouldn't have known the dangers in Hawaii. In Jamaica, because they had, like, in that area, they had, like, within like a couple months, they had like 10 murders. I mean, it was not a safe area. And a lot of times they'll tell tourists, don't go away from the resort. And of course, if you live in Jamaica, you're going to be away from the resort. And I've had my Jamaican relatives invite me to come down and stay with them and do work down there. Would I do it? Maybe, because I love the country. But yeah, she left for some reason, and it was unsafe. But for whatever reason, she thought she would be safe. and she wasn't. So very, very sad. So she of all people, sorry, she of all people should have known the safety factors of Jamaica. Sometimes tourists do not, and they're idiots. But she would know, because her grandmother would have been on her about that. She would have been nailing all the time, saying, "Don't do that," because her grandmother's not stupid. Grandmother knows what situation is down there. So 90% of the population, that much? I can't remember how many people live in Kingston, to tell you the truth. Linda's, I remember being really stupid as a young woman. I thank my lucky stars every day that somebody kept me safe. Not sure why, but very grateful. Yeah, I mean, I think we all have stories. And so that's what's so scary when your own kids grow up. You're like, please don't be as stupid as I was. Please do not be stupid. The LW says, wow, I did not know Jamaica was as bad as that. Are all those places like that? I watched Death in Paradise. It seems so nice, except for the outlandish murders. The location of Death in Paradise, a smaller island. Somebody gets murdered every week, so I don't know why they have a tourism business. Of course, that's not true in reality. That's a smaller, more peaceful island. Jamaica has struggled for years with violence. And it's frustrating because some of the nicest people are there too. I mean, they're so super friendly and just, yeah. And I love my family from there. Even though I'm divorced, I still love my family from there, so, but it's a rough place. That's why a lot of Jamaicans try to get out of there, because it's rough. We had one of our family was a police officer. He was shot down. Rough. So it's a shame. It's a shame, and they, it doesn't mean that, I have a lot of relatives who survived, I mean, they've grown up there, they've had kids there, they're still alive. So it's not like everybody gets murdered, but the murder rate is very high in Kingston. And there's just certain areas where you just don't go. You just don't go. Yeah, this is true. An aunt, I think, got a phone call from her phone number afterwards, and then they didn't anything more from that. But yeah, so I hope they figure it out one day, but it's a weird one. And it's just one of the problems when you're in certain countries is even in the US, there's a lot of people come to the United States and get murdered, and we don't solve the murders of the French person that came here or the Jamaican who came here. So they can say the same things about us. I mean, there's 6 women dead in Portland, Oregon. What about them? Same thing. So we can't always blame other countries. I was asked about this case here, about the rock throwing that was done in. Hold on a second. Hold it. Let me find it. Yeah, 3 charge. This is a bizarre crime, and I was asked, what is with this kind of a crime? 3 Colorado high school students have been charged with first-degree murder in a case where a woman died. This young woman, Alexa Bartell, 20 years old, she was killed when somebody threw a rock through her windshield. That's her windshield. A large rock was thrown through her windshield. It was a landscaping rock that struck her vehicle as she was driving down a street in Westminster, a city in the Denver area, at 10:45 p.m. They've been charged with first-degree murder involving extreme indifference. And this is the question: what the heck is extreme indifference? And 12 other counts. And 3 other people were injured after rocks were thrown at vehicles within a 45-minute span. 7 vehicles in all were struck. What they were doing was, apparently, they were in another vehicle and they were throwing the rocks from that vehicle at the other vehicles. So what is exactly what they were charged with, which is extreme indifference, all right? And there is actually, the way I look at that is, they also call it depraved, a depraved heart murder. I'll read you to, so this is from Wikipedia. In the United States law, depraved heart murder, also known as depraved indifference murder, is a type of murder where an individual acts with a depraved indifference to human life. not explicitly intending to kill. Well, even though they know that their act has a high risk of killing somebody. So they're not specifically saying, I want to kill that person, but they don't care if they do. And their acts, what they're doing is like, we think this is fun to do these things. And if somebody gets killed, oh, well, apparently, in this case, they actually took a picture of her car. So what they had done, like, woo, we did it, So that's what the depraved indifference is. And it's not the only one. Recently, there was also this case. This is in New Orleans. Excuse me. Where's the New Orleans one? Is it this guy? Yep. New Orleans police investigating disturbing video of guns shooting toward houses from a moving vehicle. And I saw that on Twitter to begin with. And they're just driving along. Somebody's driving, and the other guy's just shooting. Could have killed somebody. Did they care? Apparently, not so much. So what causes this kind of thing? This essentially the concept of depraved heart murder or indifference. A lack of empathy, 100% lack of empathy to other human beings. And it means a level of a psychopathy, not just narcissism, but psychopathy, to the point where you just don't care. And you'll see points in time where people commit these kinds of crimes. And I don't mean serial killers, people that you wouldn't necessarily expect to not have an issue with these kinds of crimes. Just do them because they don't really care about other human beings. And I was trying to think about some of these situations where a person can be, in a sense, that indifferent. I don't care what your excuse is for why you're indifferent, but that you can be. And what came to mind, and some people might object to this, but I'm going to point it out because I just find this kind of fascinating, shall we say? And this is not a political channel, so I'm not making a political statement here. But I wanted to point this out. If I can find the statement. No, I can't find the statement. That's Hiroshima. Now, there's a lot of claims about why somebody was okay about dropping a bomb of that sort on Hiroshima. Now, there was a guy, of the different people, there was this guy. This is Major Claude Etherly, the only service member who flew in the atomic bombing missions and later publicly expressed remorse for what he had done. He didn't actually drop the bomb. He was on the mission. And he became a celebrity from anti-war people. But there are a lot of people who get very upset about this, and they're more into the guy who ran the mission. And also, he didn't actually drop the bomb, but the guy with him dropped the bomb. And both of them said the same thing. And I just want to point out what they said, which I find fascinating. He said, oh, that was not it. I just lost it. Okay, here we go. Paul Tibbets, this is Paul Tibbets, Colonel Paul Tibbets, who commanded the Army Air Forces unit tasked with delivering the atomic bombs and piloted the plane that dropped the bomb on Hiroshima, defended his actions until his dying days. Fascinating to me what he said, though. I made up my mind then that the morality of dropping the bomb was not my business. It wasn't his business, but you are doing it. You're committing, in this case, the destruction of an incredible number of lives. Women, children, babies, grandmothers, grandfathers. You're also leaving people highly damaged for the rest of their lives. But you, sir, I made up my mind then that the morality of dropping the bomb was not my business. I was told to do it, and I let their morals determine what I did, which I thought was fascinating. And the concept behind this, I say, is not political channel. The concept behind it is that by dropping the bomb, we stopped the war and prevented a tremendous amount more damage in the future, especially to Americans. And I'm not going to get into what's right or wrong. It's the way he thinks that I find fascinating. This is what he told the interviewer in 1989. Then he said this: I have never lost a night's sleep on the deal. Wow. 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 That's scary. Never lost a night's sleep. Now, even if you think you did it for the right reasons, the knowledge that you were involved in the final, that level of human loss, you think would bother you a wee bit. Even if you think it was morally okay, still, even then, my God, they were innocent people. They were not soldiers. They were innocent people. And it doesn't bother you even that much. I find that fascinating. Because I know in my life, sometimes I think I'm correct about something, but then later it just bugs me that even though I thought I made a good decision and maybe I had a reason to make that decision, it still bothers me. But maybe it still hurts or it's still whatever. It may be okay, but it still bothers me because people got hurt. Or something got hurt. Something wasn't a happy ending necessarily, even if it was necessary. And it still hurts and it still makes me sad. And there's still sometimes where you lay there and you go, I wonder if there was a better way to do it. That's called having empathy for other human beings besides yourself or just your people. That's called empathy. I don't think that guy had any empathy. Was he a good soldier? Essentially, sure. Was he a brilliant Air Force dude? Absolutely. Will he do his duty? Sure did. But that doesn't mean he might not have been a psychopath. And one of the others that I thought was fascinating when it comes down to this was, that's what I pointed out before. Yeah, that's oh shoot, I forgot his name now. American Sniper dude. Who's American Sniper dude? Wait a minute. And it's let me find this. Oh, yeah, Chris Kyle. This is Chris Kyle. The movie American Sniper came out and people really loved it because he was like, again, they're representing America and saving America by killing off the bad guys, sniping them. Bill Mayer called American Sniper, Chris Kyle, a psychopath patriot. Interesting. And I looked at Chris Kyle's life and I'm like, I'm not saying I disagree with it. What can happen sometimes is in times of war provides a place for certain people to find a home for their lack of empathy, for excitement, for an adrenaline rush without having consequences that are going to put you in prison. And when I think Kyle, when he came back and wasn't a sniper anymore, he got bored out of his mind and had all kinds of issues. Because when he was there, he was given a permission to commit murder, although it's not considered murder in a war theater. And it might be even necessary. But let me tell you, there's a lot of people who couldn't do that job because perhaps they just can't reconcile the action with their humanity, even if the guy's a bad guy. So so it's very interesting when we look at indifference, the ability to have that level of indifference. there's many people who have it in many walks of life, and that can be our teenagers as well. And if we don't raise them with having a level of empathy, they can grow up indifferent and commit indifferent kinds of crimes and depraved heart crimes. And if they don't have a outlet for that that's legal, they may do things that are illegal. So you can watch the movie. It's a good movie. Good movie. And so it's a half a true story because he told a lot of tales that probably weren't quite true. So, but I say, let's not go to the political aspects of it. That's not my point here. But I just pointing out how people can do things and be indifferent. And why would a teenager not care if a woman gets killed? A 20-year-old woman, how could they not care? But then again, how could you drop a bomb and not care that thousands of people got killed who were just going about their daily life? Even if you have excuses for it, even if there's a long run good plan, I'm not saying it was, I'm not going to get politics on this, but something in your own head, I always found there was a story called there's a book called The Nazi Doctors, and I found it fascinating because I think I've told this story before. But one of the Jewish doctors, she was in the concentration camp, and Mengele gave her the right to choose who would live and who would die. And he thought he was doing a favor. Well, you can pick out the ones you think should live. And she said, I won't do that. He goes, well, you could help out, because otherwise we'll just kill them all. But, you could pick the right ones. And she says, I can't do it. And he said, well, if you don't do it, we'll kill you. And she said, if I do it, I'll kill myself. I can't do that. It's just wrong. And she stood by, and Mengele actually let her live because he was kind of impressed with her, with her ability to stand up to him, which I thought was pretty good. So depraved indifference, it comes from a lack of empathy. And a lot of that is somewhere in life you didn't get what you needed to have empathy toward other people. So, and then that's why it's so important for us to pay attention to what our kids are being raised in or with. And there's a thing that's been going on. There's a couple things I want to, let's see if I can find this one first. In Maryland right now, we have got a spate of carjackings. See if I can find here. Our police chief now says this. Police Chief Malik Aziz discusses the carjacking crisis. Statistics show that 5 years ago in 2018, there were a total of 82 carjackings in Prince George's County, which is where I live. Fast forward to 2022, there are 430. Carjackings are skyrocketing, and most of them are teenagers. And they're saying, why are the teenagers getting involved in this kind of behavior? And what does the police chief say? He says it comes down to they don't have a family. He says the parents should be held accountable. And I agree with that. There's this whole new thing now where in a number of cases, they're now saying, hey, if the kid does this and he's a juvenile, parents, something should happen with you because you're not taking care of your kids. And your kids are growing up like this. Here's a one that just amazed me. This just came out. TikTok challenge leads to jump in car thefts of Kias and Hyundais. Now look at this. 800% increase in car thefts year over year. Woo! I mean, and now you know what they're doing? New York City is now suing the car companies for not making their cars more difficult to steal. Okay, so are we going to start suing home builders for allowing home invasions? How about that one? Yeah. In other words, we have people who are becoming more criminal, and we're not focusing on that. We're accusing either the weapon or the company of not preventing the criminal from doing what he does. So making it easier for a criminal is now a crime. I'm going to say if you leave your door unlocked and a criminal gets into your house, you should go to jail. This is how stupid this whole thing is getting. It's like, oh, it just blows the mind. I mean, but we have an increased level of depravity among our young people. Why is that? And when they're carjacking, the concept of that, and it used to be, we used to hear about joyriding, where somebody would steal a car that had a key in it and go joyriding. This isn't joyriding. This is a violent, theft of a car with a human being attached to it. And what they're doing after that fact is apparently, they're having like streets. They actually leave the cars on with the car keys on it, so that other juveniles can take that car then and commit crimes. So something's going wrong here. Level of depravity. Yeah. So, speaking of depravity. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, well, now rape can lead to pregnancy and forced pregnancies, carrying the rapist to full term. Okay, we're not going to get into that. We're getting into politics. Stay out of politics. No politics on this channel. I don't want to get into abortion arguments here, or that kind of argument just causes trouble. I do want to point this one out before let's see. There's a couple more things I'm going to talk about, but I think I'm going to close this down and go do the Madeleine McCann thing. But I just want to leave you with this one, talking about depravity, just because this happened also in my county. A missing woman's daughter and grandchild are facing charges, including murder, after police say the grandmother was dismembered and grilled at the family home. Yeah, you heard me right. So apparently, grandma, she's 71 years old, found out her 44-year-old daughter was using her credit card without permission. And she challenged her on that, and she murdered her mother. And then her daughter, the 19-year-old daughter, helped chop up grandmother. So now they went to do a welfare check, okay? Now, it's always amazing to me when people commit these kind of crimes. Boy, did they do a bad job of it. They entered the family's home and they immediately smelled decomposing remains. This is when you kill your mother, you should, I don't know, maybe they didn't have a car. I mean, they weren't in an apartment. They were in a house. So I don't know if they had they couldn't find a way to get the body out of the house, out of the front door. I don't know. But they found 3 bags of human body parts in the basement. She and her daughter dismembered the body, I believe, using a chainsaw, and then attempted to dispose of the parts of the body using fire on a grill and in a bonfire. Look at this house. Let's see. It's a single family home. It's like, wait a minute. The woman's car was in the driveway. It might have been smart if you just put her body in the car and drive the car away, but they went to all this trouble. And this is usually something that happens in an apartment where the person can't get the body out and take the body someplace, so that they dismember the body and then try to take the body out in like suitcases or trash bags or things like that. But when people have single family homes, usually they don't have to do this, but I don't know. Unbelievable. Yeah. So this is true. What a crazy world we live in. Yeah. This kind of, excuse me, depravity. Yeah. And it's just, how do you even as the mother get your daughter? It's like, sorry, I killed grandma, but help me chop her up. I mean, this is something that to do this kind of thing, again, we're talking about indifference, lack of empathy, to be able to even do that. Now, with serial killers, you kind of expect that, but not with a family member, like that. And by 2 women. just sometimes it just makes you shake your head and you're like, oh my God, it's like these people are out there, So yeah, so the 19-year-old girl, she's going to be accessory after the fact. She probably won't get a long sentence. Hope I can get through the next show, and I'm going to do on my camera without coughing to death. But she's going to be out someday. So somebody who's going to marry her is like, Oh, where have you been for the last 10 years? I was in prison for chopping up a grandma. It's like, maybe not a good choice. So maybe not a good choice. Yeah, well, the thing is, they, their choices one after the other weren't very good. And apparently it was like a month later that it was reported, and they still had body parts there. So they weren't good at what they did, and they weren't good at disposal. So it just boggles the mind. It's like, wow, some people, yeah, she's a scary thing. She is a scary thing. Goodness gracious. So, oh, by the way, just so you can have a happy ending to this show, let's see. Wait a minute, what was this one? Happy ending. Where's my happy ending one? Oh, I thought I had a picture. Want to have a happy picture? I guess not. But it was what's her face? What's her face? It's one of those things that disappeared. Okay. I'm drawing a complete blank now. Oh, Theranos. Theranos. Somebody give me the word Theranos. What's her face? Who finally went to prison. The pic was her at prison. And I lost my picture. No, the psychic attorney. No, the blood one. What's her name? The one that Dr. Holmes. Elizabeth? Yeah, Elizabeth. Is it Holmes, her last name? Yeah, she's in prison now. She's got an 11-year sentence. She finally had to go to prison. And she's in a nice place where Elizabeth Holmes, yes, thank you very much. Yeah. She went out of my head when I lost my picture. But she's over there at the prison, and they have this little picnic area. It's very sweet. And she's there with her husband and not her kids. Her kids aren't there. The kids that she had when she already knew she was going to go to prison. So what a great unempathetic person that is, that would actually get pregnant, probably because she thought it would keep her out of prison, but was willing to sacrifice her children's lives, essentially, put her children in a situation without a mother in order to get whatever she wanted. So anyway, she's got her 11 years. She'll probably be out in 9. But she gets to go every week. Family can show up and they can sit in this little picnic area. And she spent like 8 hours out there. I mean, it's like you're not supposed to touch each other, but she was like holding onto her husband's little finger. Just appalling, just appalling. So, I should have warned you. Yeah, sorry about that. But I was just trying to, some of the psychopathic stuff is just, when you try to understand people, when you're talking about criminals and how they behave, what they're willing to do, and you think, I wouldn't be willing to do that. Well, it's probably because you're not a psychopath. But if you are, you're willing to do an awful lot of things because you have zero empathy for anybody else but yourself. And therefore, everybody else is somebody to be used. Person is either useful or they're in the way. That's my statement on psychopaths. Useful or in the way. And that's the way they view the world. And as long as you're useful, they might be nice to you. But if you're in the way, they might not be nice to you. So it all depends on your pawn on their chessboard, and they will do with you what they like. And so that's how they work. And when you run into them in your life and you see people manipulating you, you want to run away, because when somebody starts manipulating you and doesn't give you the right to have your own beliefs or you don't make your own decisions, or when they feel like you should do their bidding, you want to get away from them, because it can start small, but then it can become huge as to what bidding they want you to do. They're not good people to be around. And some of them are very charismatic. And in being charismatic, a lot of times people hook up with them because of what they get from them. Either they're very wealthy, or they can provide them with a fun time, or whatever. And so they're willing to give up their own their own freedoms because they like what they're going to get. So they sort of put themselves in a golden cage, but sometimes the golden cage turns out to be not so golden. So, yeah. Oh, is he fighting? I did not know. I know Joran is supposed to be getting extradited to come back here, and then he's supposed to serve whatever time here and then go back there. But he's fighting now, huh? What a surprise! He's having more fun down there. Down there, he ran a drug ring. He got married. He got divorced. Cheated with another woman. I mean, he's got he has a lot more fun down there. That's a kind of their method of imprisonment down there allows for a lot of freedom, shall we say. So, yeah. Getting visits, it helps to get visits, yes. He gets visits, yes. We do in the U.S., we have conjugal stuff too. I've never understood that concept. The concept that a serial killer can get conjugal rights and produce a child while they're in prison, I think that is so immoral, and it's disgusting because that child now has to grow up with a serial killer as their father or their mother. It's unacceptable in my opinion. So anyway, all right, I'm going to go wrap this up so I can do the Madeleine McCann thing. Yeah, I wanted to talk about a few more cases. I want to talk about the Bloody Benders. I want to save this for next week. And also, somebody had asked me to talk about where is it? Oh, no, I can't find that one either. It's bad picture time here. But I want to talk about that in the sense of what people in the past were like. So I'm going to save that, though. I'm going to save it for next week. So I'm going to talk about the Bloody Benders, which was a whole family of killers. And then I want to talk about these. That's not it. I'm sorry. It's Gacy. I might talk about him next week. Where did they go? Oh, here they are. These two sisters who brutally murdered the people they worked for in the most pretty gory way. And what would drive people to do this kind of thing? And we're talking about in the past. So, and one of the things you're going to find is that during certain decades or just during certain centuries, different kinds of crimes occur and different kinds of violence. And why is that there's different kinds of violence against different kinds of people? And that's because they live in a different world. They do. It's kind of like if you live in certain areas, the cartel runs in your area, you're going to get a whole different set of crimes as you will in an area that has that might be in the middle of war, or a place that has gangs, or a place that's just boring, or a place that, so there's all these different cultures that we live within and subcultures that inspire different kinds of expression of psychopathy. It's not that the people that commit them aren't psychopaths, but the way they commit the crimes is different depending on culture. And sometimes you can even, with subcultures, and you can even sometimes tell by the type of crime what kind of person you should be looking for, what culture they might come from. Not because they're any worse than any other culture as far as murdering goes, but just they have different styles. Styles of murders. Yep, it does exist. So anyway, I'm glad you made it late at all, and I'm glad you still love the Hangout. You're most welcome. I love you all guys too. And let me go do the Madeleine McCann thing on Christian Bruckner, because it's just come out as to why the Germans were looking at Christian Bruckner as a suspect, and do I think it's legitimate that they look at Christian Bruckner? Okay, and a lot of you know my stance is on the Madeleine McCann case, but as I'm going to look at this from, I'm going to step outside myself and look at it as from different detectives' point of view. Should they look at Christian Bruckner? Or is it all nonsense? Because Walters has been fairly nonsensical a lot of times. The prosecutor from Germany, I haven't been real impressed with him. But they've come out now with justification for why they're searching in Portugal. And I think it's kind of interesting. So I'm going to do, that's what the show is going to be on. So I'll do that right after this. So maybe I won't see you there because I'm just doing a video. But glad you were here today, and hopefully I'll see you for the case this weekend. Bye.